Paulina Luna is with me now from Congress. She's just been appointed to lead the task force on declassification of federal secrets. Anna, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Glenn. Happy to be back on. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I just have to say, yesterday, unbeknownst to me, before you are appointed, I was on a show with Patrick Bet-David, and I said within 15 days, they're going to release the client list for Jeffrey Epstein. No way, that can't be true. And I said, I'm telling you, Kash Patel, I talked to him over the summer. He is for radical transparency. It's in the hands of the director of the FBI. I think he does it day number one. But let's give him a few days to settle in. They didn't believe me. They said, we're going to track this. So, Anna, you're going to make me look bad. And I don't care if lives are destroyed or whatever, but you can't make me look bad.
No, we actually also sent a letter yesterday to the Department of Justice. As you know, Pam Bondi is heading up that organization.
Yeah.
And we also asked for it there. But I'm in the same belief that Kash will get confirmed. I think that he is going to be absolutely pushing for radical transparency. And I'd like to also, too, just point out that, at the same time that we're basically announcing our press conference and this declassification task force, we actually also found out that the FBI just so happened to locate thousands of pages of, previously undiscovered JFK files. So, look, I know a lot of people are like, well, the American people need to see that information first. And you actually will be able to see it. It's going to be declassified. But the reason why we're doing the task force is, A, just because President Trump signed an executive order doesn't mean that bureaucrats in these intelligence agencies won't attempt to block it. So we want to make sure that that's followed through. And we do have, punitive authority to hold them accountable if they don't, A. And then B, I think it's incredibly important to look at the evidence that we know now, which is sure as heck a lot different than what they had, even 60 years ago. And what we're finding and what I have said is from what I have looked at, just stuff that's already out there, also too taking into account many of the doctors that were actually at that initial responding or at that initial hospital. I do think that there were two shooters. And I think that, the whole magic bully theory that the Warren Commission pushed, I think that was faulty. I know the president at the time also believed that was a faulty theory. And so, I'm eager to uncover this. I know that there's many Democrats and Republicans that also want to get to the bottom of this. And I'm simply asking the questions that every American's been asking for decades.
So I have a really good friend, Paul Viens, who is he has the Museum of the American Soldier in Texas, and he spent a long time to get the exact right gun, the way it was modified, scope and everything else, and he just had it redone. And I have to tell you, I've held it. I'm going to take it out to the range next week, but I've held the gun. I've looked through the scope. I just don't think you could do it. I mean, it is. It's just so difficult. There were reports from doctors at the time, some of which were, first and second year med students who were at the hospital in the room where Kennedy was brought, and they reported an entry wound in the neck. From some of the footage that you can see that's actually videoed, you can see obviously Kennedy getting shot, but then also the doctors that ran the autopsies at Bethesda, Maryland, had reported seeing an entry wound in the back. And so we're talking about multiple shots here. I think the whole idea that they would try to just ignore that evidence or at least try to bury that and not even answer the questions is suspect to me. And so I think this whole idea of wanting to push against declassification or even trying to poo-poo the evidence that now has been brought to the forefront, look, it's the obligation of the U.S. government to release this information to the American people. Kennedy was arguably one of the most popular presidents, and he was assassinated. So why did they try so hard to push back against any questioning? And that's where I come in and where the task force comes in. I'm also telling people, though, if you are seeing people with large accounts in social media, especially pushing against declassification or attempting to discredit, and I saw it immediately after my press conference, trying to discredit the efforts of Congress to actually follow through and get this done. In my opinion, bad actors exist on both sides. If you really have nothing to hide, then you should not be afraid of the questioning. You shouldn't be afraid of information getting out to the American people. So let me ask you, let me push back on a couple of things, just from, playing devil's advocate. Why would you start with the JFK? Why is that even important? I mean, it happened a year before I was born. Yesterday was my 61st birthday. How is this relevant? How is this relevant?
I think So when we chose to kind of go through the hearing timelines, it's the MLK files and JFK files that are going to be released first. So we wanted to help go through that information and then also correct some of the historical narratives that were painted on the assassinations. Obviously, confirming or, holding hearings that actually present new evidence, I think, is important for knowing and fully understanding the story, right? So that's the first thing. Also,
are these going to be open hearings?
Yes. Yep, these are all open. And the reason I want them open is because I think the American people will be able to also go through the evidence. I'm also going to be doing something similar to what I did when we ran the UAP hearings and allow people to ask questions. And we're also bringing in experts. There's a few individuals that I want to bring in from the previous investigations that actually were pointing out some pretty incredible evidence that pointed to potentially a second shooter. And they were poo-pooed, and I think that those people deserve a platform. And if we find anything, and having Kash confirmed is incredibly important because he's also going to bring forward files that I would argue have been hidden from the American people. And so, look, this is obviously a big effort. We're not perfect, but we do know that the American people deserve this, and that's what we're fighting for, is total and complete transparency.
Okay, so the other pushback question that I have, and this one is actually pretty sincere from me, and that is, once we get Congress involved, then we're relitigating everything. The more Congress gets involved, the slower it will happen, and the higher the percentages, it's just not going to come out. We're just going to get pages and pages of redacted crap.
Well, so the whole purpose and objective of this task force is actually to ensure that with President Trump's executive order, that the agencies and the bureaucrats in those agencies do exactly what that executive order says, which is to declassify it. So we're not going to be siloing or holding any information that won't be available to the American people. So this is all going to be out there. You will be able to go through it yourself. It will be online, from what I gather, similar to how they've declassified previous documents from the FBI and the CIA. So, again, we are simply reopening the investigation with new evidence, also bringing in credible witnesses that will be verified and confirmed via House Oversight, the committee itself. And we are going to be opening this up to the American people. So you will have access to the same documents that we are looking at. We are just simply ensuring that we are not going to get blockaded or this information is not siloed.
Unbelievable. And when do we get to the things? By the way, the answer to my first question to you was it's relevant because I think they've been doing this kind of stuff forever, and it shows a pattern. If they were doing it in '63, what are they doing now? I just don't think that. Go ahead.
What's interesting is if you ask those questions, there are some people, and to be clear, these people largely exist in the media, and they're largely, in my opinion, bad actors. But when you have someone that instead of answering the question and having a respectful dialogue, tries to discredit something as a conspiracy theory or tries to gaslight you into thinking that you should not be asking the question, that's when you know that they're hiding something, right? So. Right. In my opinion, I've talked to many Democrats, many well-known Democrats that are just like, we want in on this commission or on this task force because we have questions, and it just doesn't sit right with. Look, this entire task force, I don't believe that this would be possible had President Trump not gotten into office, had our CIA director not been confirmed, had there not been people placed in positions of power that are true ideologues like you and I. To be clear, I think that also Marco Rubio is going to play a part at the Secretary of State's office. I think that, there are going to be many people in some of these investigations that will at least give us access to whatever information. Look, we've asked to declassify everything that I listed in that press conference, COVID-19 origins, 9/11 files. I mean, look at what just came out yesterday. We find out that the FBI was basically ordering lunch for someone that was working with the pilots that crashed the planes into the Twin Towers. I mean, that's ridiculous. And that's all just coming out now. And so that's why we ask these questions on the 9/11 files. How could have it prevented? How much did the government truly know? I mean, look, I could care less if people think I'm crazy for doing this. I can tell you that I am joined by many high-profile people in Congress, to include Democrats, that have the same questions. And so we're not going to stop.
Jeffrey Epstein, when's that coming out?
Well, I have a letter out to Pam Bondi. I know that Kash has been supportive of it. And so hopefully once they're confirmed, previously they said that the Epstein list could not be released. This is, mind you, under Biden Department of Justice. because there was an open case, right? And that's what they kept pointing to. But you're even hearing that Pam Bondi, even before she was confirmed, that she was actually calling for the release of the Jeffrey Epstein client list. So we're pushing for it. We've sent the. Go ahead.
Will Pam and Kash be the ones to make the decision? We're going to release it, or does it have? They will be the ones.
Yes, they'll be the ones. Again, I'm going off of what we were told in previous administrations, but look, they were saying that there was an open investigation, so I believe that Pam has the authority to release that. And look,
Fantastic.
I don't believe that any of that should have been classified. If there are people that were doing bad things, we should know about it.
It's unbelievable. I mean, radical transparency. It is the only thing that will heal our nation, is if we deal with all of the corruption that we've been dealing with, that we know has happened. And if we can get an honest look, maybe the Warren Commission was right. I don't know. But
we should be able to know that and
yes.
look at the evidence for ourselves. Yes.
All of the evidence, evidence without protecting anybody. Anna, thank you. It's got to be, I mean, what was it like to be, did you get the call from the president? And I mean, how did this work?
So initially, in full transparency, this was actually the task force looked a little bit different, and I chose to expand it because even our investigators said, there's a lot here. If we're truly, our absolute objective is to begin, restoring trust in the relationship with the American people. We have to go into these, different theories, go into these cases and investigate and actually find the truth, and then let the American people decide. And I agree with them. But also, Glenn, I think there was two other members that were potentially going to be taking over the initial task force, and they turned it down because there was a climate of fear that it was considered dangerous territory. And what I will tell you is I do not believe that it's dangerous territory, because we have, the 800-pound gorilla in the White House and our allies and the intelligence agencies that are pushing for this transparency. So it's not just one person. I think where you had, previous historical events that occurred, it was one person that was leading out the charge. But when it's a group effort pushing for this, it's a systematic change that occurs. And so, in my opinion, I think I'm going to be okay. But, a lot of people, I had a reporter that called me, actually a very well-known reporter from Fox News yesterday, said, it's interesting, but a lot of the people, one of the initial reporters that had reported that there were 3 shots heard at the JFK assassination, one of the prized for writing, and he actually committed suicide several years later. So, stuff like that has happened in the past, and I'm in the perspective and belief that right now we have a very small window of time to bring true change. You see everything happening with USAID. Mike Benz is uncovering a lot. Elon Musk is uncovering a lot. But there's a lot of good people that are really cleaning the system. You saw, 40,000 federal employees resign, or not resign, but chose to leave the workforce. So you're seeing a big change happen. And I'm not saying that this is a complete fix, but it definitely is going to change, I think, our country long-term and historically. And I'll also tell you this, Glenn. Yesterday, after we made the announcement, I saw a massive orchestrated campaign, specifically coming from a lot of other pages that had typically been political on social media, that were trying to discredit what I was saying about potential witnesses and trying to spin it. And the reason why they were doing it is because the Warren Commission presented a faulty theory on the single bullet, the magic bullet theory. To think that was how Kennedy was taken out and then hit the Texas governor. I mean, that whole thing in itself.
But they were saying nobody's alive. So who are you going to? Not
true. Well, first of all, I wasn't necessarily saying I was using the Warren Commission as an example of the commissions that had been set up or the hearings that had been set up. But we are actually looking to subpoena. I don't want to say their names yet, or we're not going to even.
Yeah. No. Don't.
Are individuals that are at Bethesda in the room during the 8 p.m. autopsy that the military did. Individuals that were on the assassination board that did not agree with the findings initially and with the new evidence coming out. I think that they are going to make great witnesses, and plus they were government employees, so they should pass backgrounds. And then there's another individual who's going to be very key, and I think resetting the narrative on Kennedy.
Interesting. Anna, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Just know, and you sound like you are. You know exactly what you're walking into. There's a new stat out this morning Over 3 times more people in D.C. are Googling criminal defense lawyer than anywhere else in the U.S. right now. So you got a lot of people who are freaking out. Keep up the good work. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
You bet.